Welcome back, everyone. We are going to jump into what I think will be a fun hands-on demonstration in which we're going to create a public DNS zone in Azure and implement it as a live DNS host with a purchased domain name. Jumping on into the steps, be aware that this specific demonstration is going to require a purchased domain name, which we have already purchased in advance called controlaltsuites.com, which is currently hosted at a domain registrar. With that in mind, you are certainly free to follow along in the Azure Playgrounds when setting up an Azure DNS zone, and you can also add some records to it. Keep in mind, though, that we will not be able to make that zone a live DNS zone unless you have your own purchased domain name hosted at a domain registrar. Also, for this matter, we will be using our own Azure tenant for this demonstration as opposed to the Playgrounds environment. So in this demonstration, we are going to go through the three-step process we talked about in the previous lesson. We will first create an Azure DNS zone inside of a resource group. We will then, inside of that DNS zone, create a DNS entry, which will be an A record correlating with a web server we already have set up in advance, which has the IP address of 52173.111.109. We will associate this IP address with an A record associating our domain name of controlaltsuites.com to that IP address. And then after we have our DNS records created, we're going to make them live, or essentially cut them over from the default domain registrar name server location to our Azure DNS location by switching the name server information at the domain registrar. Again, the domain registrar switchover process takes place outside of Azure. And then once we switch over our name server at the domain registrar, there may be a little bit of a delay before those changes go live. DNS switchovers are typically not an instant process. However, after hopefully a short waiting period, we will verify that new DNS queries are indeed going to our Azure DNS location by verifying the name server and also trying to go to our website of controlaltsuites.com. With that, let's jump over to our Azure tenant and get started. Okay, we are back in our live Azure tenant. This is our own full Azure tenant, which can host multiple resource groups, of which we have one right now. So, quick bit of setup has been done in advance for this demo. We have a resource group already created called Public DNS Demo, and I also have a web server created inside of that resource group called CAS-Web Server, which is, of course, in a virtual network. And if we go to the configuration information for that virtual machine, after I zoom in here a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and go to this public IP address, which correlates with our slide intro. Open up a new tab, paste into there, and that takes us to the homepage for our controlaltsuites.com organization. In addition, we also have another tab up and running for Google domains. This is the domain registrar where controlaltsuites.com is currently registered. If you've purchased domain names at other registrars like GoDaddy, Namecheap, and others, it's pretty much the same process. So at the moment, we have a web server up and running. However, the only way we can get to it is this IP address. However, I don't want to put in an IP address every time I want to order cake. So let's go ahead and fix this. So by typing in controlaltsuites.com, we can get some delicious cake. Let's go ahead and fix that now. We'll go back over to our Azure screen. And within our Azure portal, I'm going to go ahead and create a new public DNS zone. Easiest way to do that is in our search field, just type in DNS zone. And we have our DNS zone services right here. And we need to go ahead and create a zone. We'll go ahead and create a DNS zone here at the bottom. We will, of course, need to assign it to a resource group. We'll go ahead and use our public DNS demo resource group. We don't need to enable child zones or anything like that. However, we do need to populate the domain name that this DNS zone is going to host, which is going to be controlaltsuites.com. And with that, we'll just go ahead and click on Review and Create, and then Create. So again, as a quick reminder, this DNS zone is not live even after we populate some records until we cut it over, which means for the time being that we can add and remove whatever records we want, and it's not going to affect our actual domain name because we have not cut it over yet. Let's go ahead and jump into our DNS zone and go ahead and add our A record to make our website live. So as we get into our DNS zone, we have a couple pieces of information here. We have our name server entries, which we will need to populate in our domain registrar. That's going to be one of our last steps. And we also have some name server and SOA entries already populated. I'm not too concerned about these. What I am going to do, though, is go ahead and add a new record, which will be an A record, which associates an IP address with a domain name. We can do that now by, in the top left, clicking on Record Set, and let's go ahead and create our new record. Since we are working with our primary domain of controlaltsuites.com, I'll just put an @ in for the name field. The type is going to be an A record, which will be an alias record to an IP version 4 address, which is exactly what we need. We'll go ahead and stick with that. Most of our other options are fine as is. We do not need to create an alias record set, and our time to live settings are just fine as well. The last thing I need to adjust is our IP address, which is going to match up with our web server from the previous screen, of which I will copy and paste that IP address from off screen, which is going to be 52.173.111.109. Just double check that is accurate. That is the right IP address right there. Everything else is good. We'll go ahead and click OK. So we now have a new A record of 52.173.111.109 correlating with our domain name of controlaltsuites.com. Very good. This is all great, except now we need to make these records live so I can go to controlaltsuites.com and get some cake. To do that, our next step is to go to our domain registrar, which in this case is Google Domains, which is where our controlaltsuites.com domain is hosted at. And we need to switch the name servers from our default name servers, which points back to itself, or in other words, Google Domains is also the DNS host, and instead we're going to populate custom name servers, which will point to the Azure DNS service, which will make these records live. Keep in mind, if we had a number of live DNS entries in our current host that we care about, we would need to make sure that we exported those or move those records over to the new DNS host, or else we would invalidate all the existing DNS records in our current DNS host. We currently do not have any DNS records here that we care about. We're not using it for mail hosting or anything like that, so we can do a full cutover without having to worry about exporting those records to the new location. Keep in mind, though, if you did have an existing environment with existing records, you would certainly need to do this step as well. In our case, all we want to do is switch our name servers over. I'm going to go ahead and underneath the custom name servers menu here, click Switch to these settings. Now, keep in mind that most domain registrars' interfaces are a little bit different, so if you're hosted on a different domain registrar, your interface may be a little bit different. Our next step is to populate our custom name servers with the name servers correlating with our Azure DNS zone location. To do so, I will click on Manage Name Servers, and from here, I will need to populate the custom name server information that will point DNS queries over to our Azure DNS host. Back in our Azure portal, I will essentially need to copy these 4 name servers, name server 1, 2, 3, and 4, into Google Domains, which will point or associate Azure as our DNS host. So from here, it is a matter of copy and pasting. I will go to name server 1, copy, paste, and then rinse and repeat for the other 3. Let's go ahead and do that quickly. Okay, and we have our 4 name servers pointing back to Azure DNS. We'll go ahead and click on Save. And then we get a prompt saying these new DNS settings are active. Changes are published immediately. However, it may take time to propagate. In reality, there should not be that long of a waiting period before these DNS settings go live. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and then come back once we are fully switched over. Okay, after just a couple of minutes of waiting, I was able to confirm our DNS changes are now live, in which Azure DNS is our live DNS host. Let's go ahead and verify via 2 methods. One, we are going to browse to controlaltsuites.com and see if our website comes up. And we are also going to verify that the name servers for the DNS query of our website is also pointing to Azure DNS as well. Let's go ahead and check our website first. I'm going to go ahead and remove the tab for our IP address. Open up a new tab, and this time instead of typing in the IP address, I'm going to type in controlaltsuites.com. Looks like it's auto-populated. We'll hit enter. And hooray, we can now order delicious cake by typing in controlaltsuites.com instead of having to go to the IP address. The second check we're going to do is we are going to look up the name servers associated with that domain name. Easiest way to do that is go into any terminal. I'm going to go ahead and use Cloud Shell since we are already in the portal. And it will connect here in just a moment. And then I will enter the NS lookup command, which will query the name server that is associated with the domain. In this case, that command for your reference is nslookup-query type equals ns, and then our domain name of controlaltsuites.com. Hit enter. And then after we hit enter, we get a non-authoritative answer that our name server correlates with the same 4 name server entries up here, which now confirm that DNS queries to controlaltsuites.com are correctly flowing to Azure DNS as our authoritative DNS host. Very good. At this point, we have successfully implemented an Azure DNS zone and have cut over live DNS queries at the domain registrar, so all queries go to our zone and we can get to our website by typing in the correct domain name. Let's review our key takeaways before we move on. Wrapping up our key takeaways of what we learned in this demonstration of working with public DNS zones. We went through the process of creating a DNS zone on Azure and making it live, which includes creating a DNS zone, of course attached to a resource group. Inside of our DNS zone, we created a DNS record in which we created an A record that associated the IP address of our web server with our domain name, and then we were able to switch over or cut over our DNS queries over to our new Azure DNS host by switching it at the domain registrar, after which we were able to verify both the name server association and the domain resolution to our website. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this lesson. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.